Part 9 of Eros and Psyche by Robert Bridges. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Nathan at antipodeanwriter.wordpress.com. Eros and Psyche by Robert Bridges. Part 9, November. But Aphrodite to the house of Zeus being bound bade beckon out her milk-white steeds. 4 doves that ready to her royal use in golden cages stood and pecked the seeds, best of the nimble air's high-sailing folk, that wore with pride the marking of her yoke, and cooed in envy of her gentle needs. These drew in turn her chariot, when in state along the heaven with all her train she fared, and oft in journeying to the skiey gate of Zeus's palace high their flight had dared, which darkest vapour and thick glooms enshroud, above all else in the perpetual cloud, where through to mount again they stood prepared. Sleeking their feathers by her shining car, the same Hephaestus wrought for her when he, bruised in his hideous fall from heaven afar, was nursed by Thetis and Eurynome, the daughter of the ever refluent main, with whom he dwelt till he grew sound again, down in a hollow cave beside the sea. And them for kindness done was prompt to serve, forging them brooches rich in make and mode, earrings and supple chains of jointed curve, and other trinkets, while he there abode. And none of gods or men knew of his home, but they two only, and the salt sea foam to and fro past his cavern ever flowed. 'Twas then he wrought this work within the cave, embossed with rich design, a mooned car, and when returned to heaven to Venus gave, in form imagined like her crescent star, which circling nearest earth maketh at night to wakeful mortal men shadow and light, alone of all the stars in heaven that are. 2 slender wheels it had, with fretted tires of biting adamant, to take firm hold of cloud or ether, and their whirling fires threw off the air in halo where they rolled. And either nave that round the axle turned a ruby was, whose steady crimson burned betwixt the twin speed mingling fans of gold. Thereon the naked goddess mounting shook the reins, whereat the doves their wings outspread, and rising high their flight to heaven they took. And all the birds that in those courts were bred, of her broad eaves that nested families, sparrows and swallows joined their companies, a while and twittered to her overhead. But onward she with fading tracks of flame sped swiftly till she reached her journey's end, and when within the house of Zeus she came, she prayed the Sire of Heaven that he would lend Hermes the Argos slayer for her hest, and he being granted her at her request, she went forthwith to seek him and to send. Who happed within the palace then to wait upon the almighty pleasure, and her tale was quickly told, and he made answer straight, that he would find the truant without fail, asking the goddess by what signs her slave might best be known, and what the price she gave for capture or admitted for the bail. All which he took his silver style to write in letters large upon a waxed board, her age and name, her colour, face and height, her home and parentage, and the reward, and then read over as 'twas to be proclaimed, and she took oath to give the price she named, without demur, when Psyche was restored. Then on his head he closely set his cap, with eared wings erect, and over his knee he crossed each foot in turn to prove the strap that bound his winged sandals, and shook free his chlamys, and got up, and in his hand, taking his fair white ribboned herald's wand, leapt forth on air, accoutred cap a pie, and piloting along the midday sky, held southward till the narrow map of Crete lay like a fleck in azure neath his eye, when down he came, and as an eagle fleet drops in some comb, then checks his headlong stoop, with wide-flung wing wheeling in level swoop, to strike the bleating quarry with his feet. Thus he alighted, and in every town in all the isle before the close of day had carried the message which he carried down of Psyche, Aphrodite's runaway. But whosoever found the same and caught, and by such time unto her temple brought, to him the goddess would this guerdon pay. 6 honeyed kisses from her rosy mouth would Cytherea give, and one beside to quench at heart for aye love's mortal drouth, and unto him that hid her woe betide, which now was on all tongues, and Psyche's name herself overheard, or ever nigh she came to Aphrodite's temple, where she hied. When since she found her way to heaven was safe, she only wished to make it soon and sure, nor feared to meet the goddess in her chafe, so she herself surrender might secure, and not be given of other for the price. Nor was there any need of artifice, her once resplendent beauty to obscure. For now so changed she was by heavy woe, that for the little likeness that she bore to her description, she was feared to go within the fane, and when she stood before the priestess, scarce could she with oath persuade that she was Psyche, the renowned maid, whom men had left the temple to adore. But when to Hermes she was shown and given, he took no doubt, but eager to be quit, and proud of speed, returned with her to heaven, and left her with the proclamation writ, hung at her neck, the board with letters large, at Aphrodite's gate with those in charge, and up whence first he came, made haste to flit. But hapless Psyche fell, for so it chanced, to moody Cynethea's care, the one of Aphrodite's train whom she advanced to try the work abandoned by her son, who by perpetual presence made ill end of good or bad, though she could both amend, and merit praise for work by her begun. But she to better thought her heart had shut, and proved she had a spite beyond compare, nor could the keenest taunts her anger glut, which she, when soured, was never wont to spare. And now she mocked at Psyche's shame and grief, as only she might do, and to her chief along the courtyard dragged her by the hair. Nor now was Aphrodite kinder grown, having her hated rival in her power. She laughed for joy, and in triumphant tone bade her a merry welcome to her bower. 'Tis fit indeed daughters-in-law should wait upon their mothers, but thou comest late. Psyche, I looked for thee before this hour. And yet, thus gave she rein to jeer and jibe, forgive me if I hold thee negligent, or if accustomed vanity ascribe an honour to myself that was not meant. Thy lover is it, who so dearly prized the pretty soul, then left her and despised. To him more like thy heavenward steps were bent. Nor without reason Zeus, I tell thee, swooned to hear the story of the drop of oil, the revelation and the ghastly wound. My merriment is but my fear's recoil. But if my son was unkind, thou shalt see how kind a goddess can his mother be, to bring thy tainted honour clear of soil. And so, to match her promise with her mirth, 2 of her ministers she called in ken, that work the melancholy of the earth. Merimna, that with care perplexes when the hearts of mortals have the gods forgot, and Lapi, that her sorrow spares them not when mortals have forgot their fellow men. These like twin sharks that in a fair ship's wake swim constant, showing above the water blue their shearing fins and hasty ravin make of overthrow or offal, so these two on Aphrodite's passing follow hard, and now she offered to their gluts regard sweet Psyche with command their wont to do. But in what secret chamber their foul task these soul tormentors plied, or what their skill, pity of tender nature may not ask, nor poet stain his rhyme with such an ill, but they at last themselves turned from their rack, weary of cruelty, and led her back, saying that further torture were to kill. Then when the goddess saw her, more she mocked. Art thou the woman of the earth, she said, that hast in sorceries mine Eros locked, and stood thyself for worship in my stead, looking that I should pity thee or care for what illicit offspring thou mayst bear, or let thee to that god my son be wed? I know thy trick, and thou art one of them who steal love's favour in the gentle way, wearing submission for a diadem, patience and suffering for thy rich array. Thou wilt be modest, kind, implicit, so to rest thy wily spirit out of show, that it may leap the livelier into play. Devout at doing nothing, if so be the grace become thee well, but active yet, above all others be there none to see thy business and thine eager face a sweat. Lo, I will prove thy talent, thou mayst live, and all that thou desirest will I give, if thou perform the task which I shall set. She took her then aside, and bade her heed a heap of grains piled high upon the floor, millet and mustard, hemp and poppy seed, and fern bloom's undistinguishable spore, all kinds of pulse, of grasses and of spice, clover and linseed, rape and corn and rice, dodder and sesame, and many more. Sort me these seeds, she said, it now is night, I will return at morning. If I find that thou hast separated all aright, each grain from other grain after its kind, and set them in unmingled heaps apart, then shall thy wish be granted to thine heart. Whereat she turned and closed the door behind. End of part 9. Recorded by Nathan at antipodeanwriter.wordpress.com.